Hi, my name is Jenny Weaver. My husband and I lead the new Springs City Church in Sunderland. I've really enjoyed all the previous devotions so far going through Proverbs. So there's been 20 already. So if you haven't already, I'd really encourage you to go back through and have a listen. There's been a real mix of different people sharing each day, only for about 10 minutes each, and I've just found them really good. So I just would encourage you to just go back and have a listen through. So today Adam's asked me to look at Proverbs 21, so that's what I'm going to look through today. I haven't got time to read the whole chapter to you, so I really would encourage you just to either stop the video now, have a read through the whole of chapter 21 and then come back again, or if not, just at the end maybe go through and just read the whole chapter. I'm just going to pick up a couple of verses and just share some thoughts with just a couple of verses within chapter 21. When preparing for today, I obviously read through the chapter a few times in a few different versions just to kind of get the gist of it. And in the Message version, it titles it "God Examines Our Motives." And I love this. I just think it really explains the theme of what's going on in Proverbs 21, and it just runs through that whole chapter. So even though I'm only going to talk about a couple of verses, just that title of God Examines Our Motives, I think is really, really good. So I'm going to jump to verse 3. It says, "To do what's right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice." So that's from the NIV version. Sacrifice isn't really a word that's used these days, but the Message puts it, "Clean living before God and justice with our neighbours means more to God than religious performance." Things that we may consider as religious performance aren't bad things, like going to church, volunteering for church, giving financially, etc. All those kind of things are really, really good things. But if you excel at these things, but don't live well before God, you're missing the mark. In Matthew 6, verse 1, it says, "Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven." Good works for man's recognition doesn't impress God. The praise you get from the people, that will be your only reward. So what does to do what's right and just mean? The Message version says clean living before God and justice with our neighbours. Firstly, I believe living right with God is following his word and living by his guidance. Justice with our neighbours, I believe this is how we treat people, how we live. So this is to everyone, not just our literal neighbours that live next door, but the people we do life with, our family, our friends, our work colleagues, but also just the people around us as well. So the grumpy man that lives next door, there isn't a grumpy man that lives next door to us, just to say we've got really lovely neighbours, so that isn't a personal example. The woman struggling with her kids at the supermarket, the person that cut you up in the car on the way to work. It's all the people that are around us, and also the people in our lives that choose to live lives very different to ours, and maybe lives we don't agree with, but they're still people that are in our lives. And it's how we treat these people. There's a story in the Bible called the Good Samaritan. Basically, a man is lying in the road after being beaten and robbed, and 3 men walk by him. So 2 men who would be considered religious men walk by without helping. Maybe they were late for the temple, maybe they had an important meeting to go to, and then a 3rd man passed by who was in them days considered to be an enemy of the man that was in the road. And he stopped and he met the needs of the beaten man. Jesus talks in this story about which of them did right. Obviously it was a 3rd man. The 2 religious men, they didn't please God. Their prior religious acts meant nothing on the day when they walked by that man that was in need. To do what's right often has a cost, and not just financially. It costs the man in the story money, like actual money, time, effort. Are we willing to make the effort to do what's right? Because it will take an effort. I'm going to jump to verse 13 now. "Whoever shuts their ears to the cry of the poor will cry and not be heard." Again, going back to the story of the Good Samaritan, don't ignore the needs of the poor. Don't shut off to what's going on around us. Now more than ever, there's so much uncertainty. Even on our doorstep, people who 6 months ago you wouldn't have dreamed they would ever be poor might be really struggling now. And there's so much that's changed in the last few months that's just turned people's lives upside down. And the people who are suffering around us may be very different to who was suffering 6 months ago. Also, I don't think this verse is just talking about financially poor. It could be poor in relationships. It could be poor in spirit. I joke sometimes about wishing I was in lockdown on my own when the kids are driving me nuts. But I honestly believe there's a lot of people out there that are currently lonely, that actually being in lockdown on their own when they can't see their friends or their family and they're just in the house on their own, or maybe they're vulnerable or they've got health issues that means they can't mix with people at all, are actually really, really struggling, and they'd be considered poor. They might be financially well off, but they'd still be considered poor. And even for myself, in a busy house with 3 young children, days can still be a struggle. You're hearing of so many people that are suffering, just missing family, and all the things in your life that you're maybe looking forward to, or your plans of what your normal life looks like has changed so dramatically in the last few months that sometimes it can get you down a bit. But it's the people around you that can pick you back up, and obviously God that can lift your spirits and lift you up. So is there someone around you that you think may be struggling, that may not necessarily be financially poor, but they could just be having a hard time at the minute? Could you give them a call? Could you send them a text? Could you send them a little package or something to cheer them up, to help them to recognise that they've got a need, and you're just saying, hi, I can be here for you. I understand you're going through a tough time. Like, I want to help you. And what's God saying on that? What's God challenging you to do? What's God telling you? Who's around you, or who's God's bringing to your thoughts, to your mind, that actually those people really need me at the minute? The second part of the verse says, if we shut our ears to the cry of the poor, when we cry it will not be heard. All of us are going to go through times, either currently or in the future, when we'll cry out needing help. And I want to make sure that during those times God hears me. I don't believe my life is going to be rosy forever, even if it is to a certain degree now. Like, my life's not always going to be perfect. Not that it is by any stretch now, but there's times when I'm going to need God, and I want to cry out to God, and I want to be heard, and I want to be listened. And that's one of the conditions of that verse. Is like lots of things in Proverbs are conditional promises. And that's something that we can do. So then when we face our time of need, that God will listen. There's so much more in chapter 21 that I could have shared. It's a really, really good chapter. So if you haven't already stopped and read, I really would encourage you to go back and read it all through for yourself. But there's just a couple of thoughts that I wanted to share with you today. I hope you got something from this short devotion. Be blessed. Take care. Stay safe.